Thank you, Richard. Was that an original piece?
Yes.
You wrote it?
Oh, yes.
And what is the name of it?
It's called So Gentle.
So gentle. And it was. Thank you very much. Well, it's my great privilege and pleasure to have somebody else doing the talk this morning. Actually, Dr. Clancy Blakemore is supposedly retired, as I said last night at the event, and she has not stopped. She's just, everywhere you look, she is doing something wonderful. And one of the great things that she does is she offers to speak in Nightstead every last Sunday of each month. And I love hearing her. She's a great teacher, wonderful speaker. Please help me welcome the very Reverend Dr. Clancy Blakemore.
Well, I truly do know that there are teachers everywhere. Teachers everywhere. We are celebrating this 40 years of this existence of this spiritual center. The official paperwork says it's 2014, but the truth of it is you cannot just say, all right, we have a center, we have a church. It doesn't work that way. It takes a person and a person and another person who brings 4 more people, who bring 10 more people, until there is a core group that say, we are committed, our intention is to be the place, to create the space for people to come so that we can learn together. And that has happened over this period of years, probably more than 40 years, because it does take, you have to get that core number. It's sort of like in Judaism, you have to have the 10 good men before you can have a service, before you can call it holy. And it doesn't matter about the number, it's the intention to create that space where education, where learning can happen. To educate means to bring forth from the inside. Our teachers that are here and have been through the years, we can't open the top of your brains and pour in some information and then you regurgitate it. Doesn't work that way. It's about sharing experiences, ideas, spiritual truths that can empower us, and then see how we can apply them in our lives. How can we activate that information in a way that makes it for us? Because it doesn't matter if it works for somebody else or somebody else says, I know God. Until we have that sense that there is that power and that presence within us, and we can use it, and we're awake and aware to it, that makes it real. That's why it is realized. It is made real. This morning, I'd like to talk about the variety of teachers. And I know that you can relate to some of these or many of these. That's why it occurred to me I could do about a 10-week series on this. But we won't. But you think about teachers, and we think about the teachers we had in school or university or the spiritual teachers, the ministers, the practitioners, the people who brought us to a center. They were like opening the door for us. They were in some way our teachers. The congregants, our friends that say, have you thought about it this way? Have you considered this? Is there another possibility? In that way, they too are teachers. This is my anniversary month. I've been studying for 33 years. Now, one might think that I would have a handle on this stuff. And I do. I have a glimmer of it, and I know how it works. And the truth is that I knew before I walked into that spiritual center 33 years ago how to do things that were effective in my life, because I did a lot of experimenting. And I fell on my face a number of times, and a number of times I just said, well, I know that I can do this, and there's good here, and I got up, I learned from the mistake, the one that didn't work, and I moved on just like we all did, and then we end up here. One of the master teachers is considered Jesus of Nazareth. And one of the things that is reported in the Beatitudes, notice it's a B attitude, said, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." My first minister years ago, Dr. Peggy Bassett, described a new minister as being meek, and I went, "Are you kidding? I know this guy. He was a salesman, car salesman. This guy ain't meek." He was audacious. He was out there. And then she went on to say, "Blessed are the meek, the teachable." And he was teachable. And he became a very successful minister. He's still in the ministry. Blessed are the meek. And the master teacher, Jesus, also said, "Be as children, and you can enter the kingdom of heaven." Kingdom of heaven is within, he has told us. That means as we are childlike, as we are innocent, as we are exploring, as we are willing to take on a new something. Children are always taking on something new. Oh, if I can jump on the trampoline, what if I can do a backflip on the trampoline? Well, can I do a cartwheel on the trampoline? Can I do jump over my dog on the trampoline? As children, childlike, we are entering that place of new possibilities. Ernest Holmes said, "This has ever been the lesson taught by the illumined, that we find God within ourselves." So if God is within ourselves, and we can waken to that, then perhaps everything and everyone that we encounter can be our teacher. Well, I found teachers in nature and animals and people and events. I find them all the time. We just returned from a 2-week vacation. 7 days of that was on the road, and that too was an exploration and a learning. We put 3,000 miles on our little Prius. Go, yes! Do you know there are places in this world, in Montana, for example, where there are miles and miles of nothing except beauty? Driving along, speed limit's 80 miles an hour. Look in the rearview mirror, there's not a car in sight. Look ahead, way up there, a number of miles, is another vehicle. Out in the middle of all that, there happened to be a truck that came on the road, and it had a little yellow thing on the top, and it turned on the yellow thing. It wasn't a police officer, and he stopped in the middle of the road, so of course we slowed down and stopped to let a big, giant moose cross in front of us. Well, let's see. What can I learn from the moose? Hey, this is my day. I can be and do however I want to. When he just leaped over the fence. Another part of nature. And the awe and the beauty and the sound that just reminded us again and again of the limitless creation of spirit. And it's never stopping. It's always going on. And it reminds us of the cycles of life and death and regrowth and rebirth and life and death and regrowth and rebirth. Beauty and joy. Nature. Our teachers, our people, of course. Gandhi, Martin Luther King, being peace teachers, nonviolent teachers, non-resistant teachers. Another possibility. Teachers that show up in other kinds of forms. We decided that we would take the red bus through Glacier National Park. And the red bus is an bus that's part of a series that was built specifically for the national parks in the 1930s. And it's a wood, all around, beautifully preserved, canvas top. And the structure, the steel structure and the motors and everything has been renewed. So that's nice and safe. The red bus driver, charming woman, just loves to do this kind of thing. She exemplified loving where she was in the moment and sharing all of the information about the glaciers and the mountains and the history and the myths behind them. It was a total day's education. Now, do I remember all of that? No. But the parts that I remember are the parts that touched me and the stories and reminded me of God's creation through her. People who share the music, create, teach us through music and song. Reverend Kathleen's songs that always are teaching us, as well as the speaking and the message. And I'd like to tell you about my grandfather. My mother's father probably got maybe through 6th grade. Could read and write, and he could build you a house that is still standing today. He started in the early 1900s. He was a contractor, and if Dorr Freeman was going to build you a house, you knew it was quality from the ground up. That was his work. That was his passion. And he was a craftsman. None of this buy some cabinets and move them in. Everyone hand-built. That was his work. What was his quiet mission in life? To share his generosity from what he had. I have memories of him saying to me, "Would you like to go with me for a ride?" "Sure." It's a little kid. And I didn't know what he was doing. He put some boxes in the trunk of his car. We were living in this town in this little burg of 250 people. And he drove up to a house on early Thanksgiving morning and quietly took a box up and put it on the porch and drove away. And he did that for about 3 houses in town. Those were houses where people were having some challenges that winter. I didn't know till later. My mother told me. Although my grandfather didn't go 3 doors up to go to church every Sunday, he worked, 5, 6, 7 days a week. Often Sunday he sat in his chair and read his paper. But it was my grandfather who paid the money that made sure that little church had heat so the people who did come were not freezing. It was my grandfather who built their house that my mother and her sister came to when they were very small children. 2 stories. The main floor had everything you needed on it. And then there was a beautiful staircase that went up to the 2nd floor. And on the 2nd floor, the 2 girls could have their bedrooms. It was also designed with a kitchen and a bathroom. And as a child, looking back to when I was a child, I know of at least 5 families who were temporarily in a challenging place, who lived in that upstairs and were assured of shelter and food until they could get on their feet again. An illness in the family, somebody couldn't work, whatever it was going on. He designed his home to be open, to be a space of sanctuary. He was a teacher without portfolio. And I know that there are people that you are aware of who have taught you well, taught you from their hearts beyond any spoken word, any books that might have been written. And we know the spiritual books that support us. We know how blessed we are to be able to access those. And I invite you today to just do a little perspective, reflective work and say, who have been my teachers? My high school teacher, who also happened to have been a teacher of my mother, my biological father, my stepfather, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins. And my parents got divorced when I was about 8. And when I was in high school, this teacher quietly one day in the hallway said to me, "You know, your parents loved each other very much." I don't know what prompted her. I don't know what was going on. But her intuition told me. She was a teacher beyond English. She was a teacher from the heart. Sometimes our pets are our teachers. We had a big, oversized Doberman named Jake. Big, vicious-looking dog. We had a double door. We were living in St. Louis area. Double front door that was metal, so you couldn't put a little peek hole through it. So if somebody came knocked on the door, rang the doorbell, and I wasn't expecting somebody, Jake would come with me, and I hold his collar, and I'd say, "Stay, Jake." Because he was, you see where my hand is. I mean, he was almost came to my waist. And I'd open the door and say, "Yes." Well, you know, I never had any concern about who might be on the other side of that door. And the truth was, Jake was a love dog. He just would love you up, and if he could have sat in your lap, he would have. And what he became was a teacher for people who were afraid of dogs. Because we had many times groups of people in our home, and Jake was just always around, just there, because there's part of the family. And we had a number of people who said, "You know, I always was uneasy around big dogs. And Jake taught me not to be afraid." Think about your pets. Think about the animals that you've known who have been your teachers. So we can expand the whole idea of teachers everywhere beyond people that walk around in our human form that happen to have some alphabet letters after their names or before their names or whatever. But what it takes for us to recognize them is to stay awake and aware. And notice if some of our teachers may be teaching us what not to do. Say, "Well, I wouldn't want to walk that path. Thank you very much. I'm glad that one's not my path of exploration and understanding." They too are our teachers. If somebody is expressing a lot of stinking thinking and planting seeds in their life that really are not growing what they would like to have grown for their empowerment, but they're not awake to it, we can just notice. And on our love, our compassion, say, "Bless you. I'll choose a different path. Thank you very much." And as teachers ourselves, because we all are teachers, we may be the only book somebody ever reads, because people are always noticing So part of our opportunity is to tap the secret wisdom that is in us. And notice, am I living my life with a commitment to do no harm? To act mindfully? To love generously? And to live from a state of acknowledging my wholeness with Spirit? Am I willing to do that? In the Kabbalah it says, all things can be made holy. Buried in the most mundane and even the most difficult is a spark of God that animates life and all of life's experiences. Even in the most mundane. Brother Lawrence, who found washing dishes, his blessing and his communion with Spirit. I've even practiced, cleaning the toilet from a place of Spirit. We can. So let us notice how we are willing to be meek and teachable this coming week, and maybe beyond. Being open to the learning and the teachers that are around us in all the varied forms. Even to the person that we hand one of our baggies to that says, thank you, God bless. That's what I've noticed the reaction when I've passed them around. And to continue learning, to be open to allow that secret wisdom that is within us to come and come outward. Our teachers are everywhere. Let's enjoy the journey as we learn together. That's why we come in community. We're in support. People say, yeah, go for it. Yeah, I can see you doing it. Of course you can. Up until now, that's the way it's been. It doesn't have to be that way anymore. What's another possibility? Of course you can. Yes, you can. Go for it. From that place of our exploration, I invite you to take out the little card that we started with. So from that place of recognizing teachers everywhere, let us just enjoy this journey of learning. And we speak our word. When we speak our word with confidence, yes, I know. Yes, I know. My very first teaching job, I came from Michigan. I was offered a job in the Mojave Desert. Is that an irony? I love trees and water. Mojave Desert. As a speech therapist, going from one school to the other all week long. One drive I had was 90 miles one way. And I said, well, I can do anything for 10 months. Let's see. It was a glorious year. And I met my first husband there, who was a perfect first husband and father of my children. And our paths are now on different. Now I have my perfect last husband. Well, you're my last, honey. The part about that is to stay open and teachable, because 25 years from when I took that job on the Mojave, I was in ministerial school, was invited to Big Bear to speak and do a workshop because they didn't have a minister, and they would ask ministerial students to come up and do that. We went up, and I spoke, and then we went to lunch, and we were going back to do the workshop. And over lunch, we were chatting, and one lady said something about being a speech therapist. I said, I used to be a speech therapist. And I said, where do you work? She said, on the backside of Big Bear by Mojave. I said, I taught in Mojave. She said, oh, really? I did too. She said, I said, when were you there? She said, well, I had to leave there in 1958 to go back to Michigan because I had a family emergency. I said, I went to the Mojave in 1958 from Michigan. I took her job, and 25 years later, we met. Now, we get to stay open, don't we, to opportunities and teaching possibilities, whether it's with legal words or not. Let us say our completion. I remember that everyone everywhere is my teacher. I learn from the wisdom of the ages. I learn from nature. I too have a spirit wisdom. I want loving wisdom to grow in my life, so I'm willing to be loving wisdom expressing now. I celebrate teachers everywhere and in every form and shape, and so it is.